6,000 starving men facing 20,000 of Europe's finest knights, no reinforcements, no escape, and yet they still advanced. The year is 1415, northern France. A cold wind moves across empty fields. The sky is heavy, grey, unforgiving. King Henry V of England has crossed the sea with an ambition that feels almost impossible, not just to invade, but to change the balance of power in Europe itself. At the beginning of the campaign, his army was larger, confident, organised, but war does not stay still. It consumes everything. Disease spread quietly through the camps. Men who survived battles collapsed in silence during marches. Food became scarce. Morale became thinner than armour, and slowly the army shrank, until only 6,000 remained. Not 6,000 strong warriors, 6,000 exhausted survivors, hungry, tired, surrounded by enemy land. Their only goal now was survival. Reach Calais, return home, end the campaign before it ended them. But the French had other plans. Across the fields of northern France, a much larger force gathered. Tens of thousands of men, knights in full-plate armour, professional soldiers of the highest rank in medieval Europe. These were not ordinary fighters. These were men trained from childhood to fight in war. Their armour was expensive. Their horses were strong, their confidence absolute. They believed the English were already finished. They believed this campaign was over. They were not preparing for a battle. They were preparing for a slaughter. The English army moved through hostile territory, searching for a way out. But every path was blocked. Every direction led deeper into danger, until finally they stopped on a narrow stretch of land called Agincourt. A field surrounded by forests on both sides, no space to maneuver, no room to escape. And then the rain began. At first it was light, then it did not stop. Day after day, rain fell over northern France. The soil softened, the ground darkened. The battlefield slowly transformed. What was once solid earth became a trap. Thick mud, deep enough to swallow movement, heavy enough to slow horses, deadly enough to change history. Inside the English camp there was no celebration, only silence. Men sat under wet cloth and broken tents, weapons resting beside bodies that no longer felt strong enough to lift them. King Henry walked among them, not above them, not apart. Among them, no royal shelter, no distance, just a man who knew that the next morning might be the last. On the other side of the field, the French army was loud. Drums, voices, laughter. They were not afraid. They were dividing expectations of victory, discussing prisoners, counting rewards before the battle had even begun. They believed the English had nowhere left to go, and for once, they were almost right. Morning arrived, not with sunlight but with silence, a strange, heavy silence that covered everything. The two armies faced each other across a narrow field. The French stretched wide across the land, hundreds of armoured knights ready to charge. The English stood still, waiting. Hours passed. Nothing moved. The tension grew heavier than the armour itself. The French expected the English to break first, to advance, to make the mistake. But Henry did not move. Time stretched. 1 hour, 2 hours, still nothing. The French began to grow impatient, and impatience in war is dangerous. Then Henry made his decision. He ordered his army forward. 6,000 men stepped into the mud. Not charging, not running, walking slowly. Into the heart of an army many times their size. They stopped just within range, and the silence broke. Release! The sky turned into movement. Thousands of arrows filled the air at once. A dark wave of wood and iron crossing the sky. Horses screamed before they reached the enemy lines. Knights fell before they understood what was happening. The French charge began and immediately collapsed. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Behind them, thousands more pushed forward. The field was too narrow, the formation too tight, the mud too deep. Every step became harder than the last. Armor that once symbolized power now dragged men down, heavy, unforgiving, deadly. Men began to fall, and when they fell, they did not rise again. The mud held them, the weight of armor held them. The pressure of thousands of bodies behind them held them. The battlefield stopped being a battlefield. It became a collapse. The English archers continued firing until their arrows ran out. Then they dropped their bows and picked up what they could find. Axes, hammers, knives, and they moved forward into the chaos. King Henry himself fought in the front line. His helmet was struck, dented, nearly broken. He was almost killed twice in the same battle, but he did not leave. Hours passed, and slowly the French army broke, not from defeat in strength, but from inability to move, from pressure, from mud, from collapse inside their own formation. When the battle ended, the silence returned. But this time, it was different. Thousands of French soldiers lay dead in the mud, between 4,000 and 10,000 depending on the account. The English lost only a few hundred, some say fewer than 100. The battlefield, that should have been a crushing defeat, became one of the most famous victories in history, not because of numbers, but because of ground, timing, and discipline. Henry would later sign a treaty that placed him in line for the French crown itself. A victory beyond imagination, but he would not live long after it. He died at 35, and yet, history does not remember his death. It remembers the field, a narrow strip of mud in northern France, Agincourt, because sometimes wars are not decided by armies. They are decided by the ground beneath them, and sometimes the side that understands the ground decides history itself.